For more on whether Europe is united in the face of Russian threats to Ukraine and NATO, we get two views. Kasia Pisarska is chair of the Warsaw Security Forum, a NATO-sponsored organization that hosts high-level conferences on security. She's also chair of the European Academy of Diplomacy and professor at the Warsaw School of Economics. And Thomas Kleine-Brockhoff is vice president and director of the Berlin office of the German Marshall Fund of the United States, a think tank that promotes U.S.-European cooperation. Welcome both to the NewsHour. Kasia Pisarska, let me start with you. What is your reaction to what we just heard? Those mixed messages from Vladimir Putin, on the one hand, endorsing the idea of diplomacy, but also saying the U.S. and NATO failed to meet his demands.
Well, let's be honest, it has not been a good week for Vladimir Putin. This past few days, we've seen unprecedented unity on the side of many NATO member states. For the first time, really trying to put together sanctions that would hurt. From the United Kingdom declaring that it will sanction oligarchs, Russian oligarchs living in the UK, and nothing is off the table here, to Denmark or, of course, the Baltic states, Poland already sending arms to Ukraine. So Vladimir Putin sees that the Western alliance, that the NATO alliance is extremely serious.
Thomas Kleine-Brockhoff, is that how you see it? Western unity in the face of Russian aggression?
Well, that Europeans disagree with each other would be nothing unusual. That's what happens all the time, and the European Union is that big compromise machine to deal with it. The unusual thing now is, indeed, as Kasia said, unity. Folks sing from the same song sheet, and I think that is what Vladimir Putin achieved with his threat. And in some ways, that may not be what he expected. To hear. Now, there is nuances, there always will be nuances, but the big message is that I think Western countries, European countries have understood what this is about and what the threat is.
Kasia Pisarska, but are there not differences? We have Germany, for example, not sending weapons to Ukraine, refusing to publicly say that Nord Stream 2 would be canceled in the face of invasion, while, as you said, the UK and Eastern flank countries are supporting Ukraine military and trying to publicly support Zelensky himself in Kyiv.
You know, I say this with great regret sitting here in Warsaw, that Germany has lost an incredible chance for its foreign policy, for the new government's foreign policy, to really stand up to the challenge. I do agree, and this is also the assessment, the regional assessment, not only here in Warsaw, but also in Bucharest, in the Baltic states, and surely in Ukraine, that because of fears, lack of public support, some historical issues, it has not taken the challenge of actually leading the European Union in responding to this crisis. This is a stark contrast to what Angela Merkel has been doing for many years, and it was her very clear stance on the annexation of Crimea in 2014 that allowed the EU to create a package of sanctions that we expanded in 2015 and actually sustain these sanctions over the long term. This leadership is missed.
Thomas Kleine-Brockhoff, is that how you see it? Germany has failed to lead?
Here's where the nuances that I talked about come in. It is true that this is a new government that hasn't found its footing yet. This is a German government that comes in as a domestic reform government with a fragile coalition. And now they're catching up to reality, that there is a reality beyond their nice program of industrial transformation. All of a sudden, foreign policy intrudes into their plans, and they're not prepared for that. And it is no surprise, and certainly not to me, that Germany is not hawkish, is not forward-leaning when it comes to Russia. But make no mistake, this government will be part of the Western alliance should Vladimir Putin move, and they will be part of a sanctions regime.
Kasia Pisarska, I wonder if we could talk about France and Italy. We've seen the leaders of those countries speaking directly with Vladimir Putin over the last few days, including Macron twice in the last 4 days. Is there a difference between the diplomacy that they are trying to engage with Russia and the more forcible stance that the Brits, that the Poles have taken with Ukraine?
Absolutely. From a Central European perspective, there are fears, and some of these are legitimate fears, that France will be soft on Russia and Italy will be soft on Russia, much softer if there is no real threat for Vladimir Putin in terms of large costs, sanctions, and also, most importantly, those type of actions that would hurt oligarchs and Putin's money that is in different places around the West, then he will probably see this as weakness, and that will only give a reason for him to move forward into Ukraine.
Thomas Kleine-Brockhoff, is there softness, is there weakness that you see in France and perhaps other countries, including Italy?
First, these are 30 countries in NATO that heads of state and heads of government talk independently with Mr. Putin is their right. It is just important that we all sing from the same song sheet. Unfortunately, with Mr. Macron, we don't know about his song sheet. We don't know what there's been no pre-briefings, there's been no post-briefings. This is what concerns me. Mr. Macron has talked about the need for a new European security architecture just a few days ago, at a time when Mr. Putin is threatening that very architecture. So one would wonder what that conversation would have to be like. So I'm waiting for him to give us a readout of it, just as we've expected and received from our American friends that to be the case. Mr. Macron is the president of the European Council at the moment, so he has every right to move forward, but he needs to communicate with the rest of us.
Katarzyna Pisarska, Thomas Kleine-Brockhoff, thank you very much to you both.